there's so many, the way I see it, universal forces, whether it's guides, angels, whatever it is, God, they can't do things for you. They're just reflecting whatever it is that you believe within yourself, and whatever decisions you make for your life, they just go with whatever you decide. And so just making this decision of like, okay, I'm ready to open up. I'm ready to see. I'm ready to receive whatever it is that I need to receive. And oftentimes that just puts a little crack into the eggshell. If you could guarantee making your dream life your reality, what would that be worth to you? Welcome to the Manifestation Babe podcast, where we take topics like manifestation, the universal laws, quantum physics, personal growth, and spirituality, and turn them into simple, powerful, practical steps to apply in your life. I'm Catherine Zinkina, manifestation expert, master mindset coach, and multiple seven-figure entrepreneur who has generated over $25 million in just 7 years. I am obsessed with helping you achieve everything that you once thought was impossible. There is no such thing as an unrealistic dream. And with the tools that I give you, don't be surprised when every area of your life receives a massive up-level. Are you ready? Let's manifest. Hello, my beautiful angels, and welcome back to the Manifestation Babe podcast. I hope you are doing amazing and didn't miss me too much last week, as you may have noticed that Mama needed a break, okay? And she didn't have the bandwidth to create any content because, and I don't know why I keep talking in third person, I've been deep in book proposal mode, in the writing realms, and I had a lot of rest and rejuvenation in the last week, and I'm super proud of that. I feel like I really let my body rest. I'm raising a toddler at the same time, and I'm continuing to detox my body from black mold and glyphosate and all kinds of nasty stuff that is actually such a taxing process. I don't know if anyone's ever been through this process, but honestly, I'm amazed with myself how I even stay on top of one thing in my life alongside this process. But all is going well with that. If you're curious, my health is actually improving, and we have the receipts to back it up. I did a retest. I've been doing this protocol for the last 8 months now, and I finally did a retest. Unfortunately, the tests take forever to come back as results. And so even then, it just shows me like what's been going on in my body from like 2 months ago, and I'm retesting again in 2 months. So hopefully it keeps improving. But so far, in case you're curious, my insulin levels have improved drastically. I had really high insulin levels. I had really high glucose, fasting glucose levels. My A1C was in the pre-diabetic range. So all of that has gone down, or whatever direction it needs to go in. And my cholesterol has improved. I think my cholesterol went down by like 40 points, which is awesome. The amount of glyphosate in my body has gone down by like 500 points. And I'm just using points because I don't remember the actual like metric that they use, but I just remember the number went down by 500-ish. And I think I have like another 1,000 to 1,500 to go. I might be mixing things up. Honestly, I haven't really looked at my lab since my call, but I just know that things are going in the right direction. The mold has been coming out of me, and that shows in the urine tests. My ferritin levels, which has to do with iron, has gone up by 50 points. So I'm no longer anemic, thank God. I had no idea I was anemic. It was very low, and I'm finally in the normal range. So I'm feeling better. I feel like overall everything is trending in the right direction, which is phenomenal. And I know I haven't talked much about the protocol that I've been on since like October-ish, but I promise I'll figure out a way to do it in a way that just doesn't bore you completely to tears. Maybe I'll do like one big giant health update once I'm on the other side of this. Like I've always intended on creating a whole update, but I just, I'm still in the middle of it. So I really want to get on the other side first. Maybe I'll bring on like some experts that have helped me if that's something you're interested in. I don't know. I feel like for me, selfishly, the number one podcast category that I listen to outside of personal development and like personal growth and spirituality is the wellness space and the biohacking space and like health specifically. So, I personally love deep dives into this. I'm not sure if you are too, but if you are, let me know. And at the very least, I'll just do a personal update. But anyway, that is not the point of this episode. The point of this episode is I am taking you behind the scenes into a Sedona retreat that I did recently with some of my best friends in the world who I would trust with the deepest and the darkest of secrets. Not that I have any. I'm way too much of an open book to ever have any secrets, unfortunately. Like I feel like sometimes being such an open book gets me in trouble, but I also just choose to see it as a good quality. And we decided to literally set up a bunch of microphones around a table on the last day of our retreat and just do a deep dive into some of our favorite topics like spirituality and what it's like to go through a spiritual awakening and how to become more aware of life outside of the 3D in a way that's beneficial to growth in the 3D. So bringing the spiritual tools and the practices into the day-to-day life. And this group of beautiful souls that I'm talking about just happens to be James Wedmore, which so many of you are now familiar with. He's been my business mentor for the last 5 years now. So he's one of the people, his intuitive, beautiful partner, Jennifer Finley, and James's freakishly spiritual gifted sister, who I look up to so much because I swear her level of dreams and messages that she gets, I'm like, Jill, I just want to be you. So Jill Foubister is another one. And it's going to be the four of us in this episode. And we all also work with the same shaman that I do. And part of these retreats are not only spending quality time with each other, which I just hold so near and dear to my heart. I feel like I have so many just incredible breakthroughs every time we spend time together, but we also spend some time with our shaman where we really deepen our knowledge of the spiritual world, where we recapitulate our own lessons that we're currently learning and talk about messages that we've received from the spirit world and what does that mean and how can it be applied to our day-to-day life. And then of course, prepare ourselves for the next quarter of many, many, many more spiritual initiations. So I think you're going to love this episode. You're going to receive so much out of it. And I feel like it'll feel like you're just sitting at a table with us, just, having a cup of coffee with us while on retreat with us. So it's really like a BTS behind the scenes, come spend some time with us and just listen to how our minds work and actual conversations that we have with each other. So let me know how you like this episode. I don't think we've ever done this before. And if we should do these every time we get together on retreat, and any other feedback you have, just send me a DM or comment on my latest post on my Instagram. It's at Manifestation Babe if you're not already following me, or you can also send an email to hello@manifestationbabe.com. Your feedback is my favorite. And of course, leaving a review is also incredibly helpful to the podcast. And I appreciate every single review that I receive. So thank you. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into James, Jill, Jen, and I.
Here we are. Greetings from Sedona. We've got all four of us here together. We've got Jenny,
the squad,
Jill, Catherine, myself. This is fun. We're doing this in person. I like this.
Yeah.
It's interesting hanging out with you guys because I always see how gifted all three of you are. And I've known, Jill and Jen for very, very, well, obviously Jill my whole life.
Thank you.
I've known
entire
Jill
life. Known me for a little bit.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Jen, it's going to be almost 20 years.
20 years.
Dang. Catherine, about a week. So I always see how amazingly gifted you are. And I think that's a cool place to start. A lot of people come to all of us about asking questions around how do you awaken those gifts, and questions around are those something that anyone can access and stuff. And and like, how do you start to develop those muscles, if you will? And I'll never forget when I launched my business program, Business by Design. I did like the beta version, and I was preparing for the call, and I just admitted on the call, I said, this is going to be really challenging for me because so many of the decisions I make in my business are so intuitively led that it's hard to just go do this, because that's what everyone else was telling me. And there was things like, yeah, but I think I'm going to do it this way. And I think I'm going to do that. And you have these moments in your life where you look back and you're like, wow, I made the right decision to trust that. And I think a lot more people are awakening to those gifts, or they're curious about them. And so I was wondering if any of you wanted to start there as a topic of like, how can someone start to cultivate that? What has been your processes like? And I think that is a good question too, because I remember when I got introduced to this stuff, I was like, isn't that just something people are born with? Like some people are, maybe there is just like a psychic or a medium, and that's
the same thing.
Your gift, and not for the rest of us. So first of all, can anyone be intuitive?
Yes.
I think so. Yes.
I definitely think so.
I think you're born intuitive.
Everybody.
Every single person. I think it gets down to you becoming aware of it and the choice.
And we like kind of forget.
I think it's a muscle, and it's like any muscle, it can atrophy, which means shrink, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. So it can like grow or shrink depending on whether or not you use it. And I think that the way our society is structured, that we are not taught in school or from our caregivers or from adults in our life, how to maintain that muscle and how to grow it and make it stronger. And so we lose it.
Totally.
And then for so many people, it's like at some point in their lives, depending on what happens, they have this realization that there must be something more to life. Like there must be more. This can't be it. I'm not just here to pay bills and die. There's something missing, or they go through a shamanic death, like a divorce or getting fired from their jobs, or something happens. And I think that that's what triggers the spiritual awakening for a lot of people. It's like life reminding them that this isn't all that there is. And that's, in my experience, how I see so many people's journeys begin, of just like remembering that they have that muscle within them. And it's just a matter of them choosing to grow it.
I remember part of your story years ago where you heard that voice asking you a question, who are you living for?
That's where it all began.
And I think that's such a first step for so many people, because if you're not asking that question, then probably the default answer is someone else, not you.
Yeah.
And so the decisions in your life about career path, who to marry, where to live, how your life is supposed to be, are probably the decisions of somebody else. And so I think so much of even just beginning to awaken those gifts is like live for yourself. And, when people come to a program like mine, like Business by Design, it's really like life by design is a through line and a message for everybody. And I think awakening gifts isn't so you can just think you're cool and different than everybody else. But I don't think you can create a life by design if you don't start to awaken to that, your own design. It's a life by default. It's the default of others' expectations and beliefs and programs that aren't even yours. So I thought that was really cool when you started asking that, because most people don't.
That was a big game changer for me. So like growing up, my mom's always been into like things like astrology and psychics, but always under wraps. So I actually didn't know this until I started getting into, like, at the time, deeper into manifestation and things like oracle decks and all sorts of books and astrology readings and numerology. And having a conversation with my mom, she's like, I had to keep that under wraps, because in the Soviet Union, having those kinds of beliefs, even just religious beliefs, like just going to a church, you would get prosecuted for it. So growing up, I had no idea that my mom was like into those things. And I didn't grow up with any sort of there was no spiritual teachings. There were no religious teachings. There was like nothing. So my interpretation of God, I don't feel like I really had one until obviously I got into manifestation. And for whatever reason, when I learned about the concept, it felt like such a remembering. It's like someone finally explained something to me that made sense for the very first time. And it just felt like this remembering. And I know now it's past lives and past lives and past lives, right? This is like another life for me where I come into these teachings and help people with them. But it was actually at a Tony Robbins event where I had this voice, which I know is my internal voice, the voice of intuition, ask, Catherine, who are you living for? And at the time, like I was programmed, you're going to go to medical school, you're going to live here, you're going to marry this person, this is what your life is going to look like in order for you to be happy and successful, like really taking on my mom's version of happiness and success for myself. And I just heard this voice and I remember thinking, I was like, oh, it's a cute question. So I just wrote it down. And as the event went, it was just louder and louder and louder, like, Catherine, who the F are you living for? And all of a sudden it was like everyone but myself. And I made all these decisions right then and there to not go to medical school, break up with the boyfriend, move away from the Pacific Northwest to Los Angeles. And when I came home, I was actually staying on my grandma's couch. It was in Los Angeles that weekend. And when I came home, I remember for the first time ever looking up at the ceiling and just being like, God, universe, whoever you are, if you exist, can you please send me a sign that I'm not crazy, that I'm like doing something right, because I feel absolutely insane. And according to everyone else's definition for what happiness and success looks like for me, I am absolutely making the wrong decisions, because according to their model of the world, I'm insane. And so I remember like looking up and being like, if I'm on the right path, can you please send me 1111? And at the time that meant nothing to me. It was really just something my best friend would always say, like, 1111, make a wish. And so I said that, and my best friend was actually picking me up to go to lunch, because I was like, we have things to talk about. I don't know what's going on. We have to catch up. And I was still staying like another week in LA past the event. So I had some time to process, and I was processing so much with her. And I'll never forget driving through the canyons of LA and seeing all the lights. And it just felt like, look at all this possibility available to you, as long as you make the right decision at this fork in the road. And I knew the right decision was all of these decisions that I had made. I just haven't acted on them yet. And I just felt crazy. So anyway, before she picked me up, I went to my grandma's kitchen to grab a glass of water right when she texted me, like, I'm here. And I look at the microwave, look at the time, and it was 11:11. And ever since then, the signs, it just was an avalanche of alignments and spiritual awakenings and messages and connections to guides and finding books and eventually finding, the shaman that we work with. Like, it was just this avalanche that began. And I often tell people, opening up your gifts sometimes could just be like a decision that you make. It's like an announcement, because there's such thing as free will, right? There's the laws of free will. And so there's so many, the way I see it, universal forces, whether it's guides, angels, whatever it is, God, they can't do things for you. They're just reflecting whatever it is that you believe within yourself, and whatever decisions you make for your life, they just go with whatever you decide. And so just making this decision of like, okay, I'm ready to open up. I'm ready to see. I'm ready to receive whatever it is that I need to receive. And oftentimes that just puts a little crack into the eggshell.
I think the biggest part of that too is the decision to receive, to ask for guidance or that sign or something, and actually trust in that. Because where I started, I was very much like this autonomous being where nothing and no one could help me but me. So there was no asking, there was no looking, there was no signs. It was, if it's meant to be, it's up to me alone and only me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you try one of those cuckoo experiments where you start saying, well, okay, all right, if this is just like you did, and I've had all those in my own life. And up until that point in my life, I never thought, I'm going to look for a sign, And once you do that, you like can't ignore it. And then you realize it's all around you. Yeah.
I think you realize it's all around you if you begin to cultivate the skill of diffuse awareness. That's what I've noticed. I don't know if you've experienced this with your students, Jill, because both of us teach awakening gifts. And specifically awakening intuitive gifts. I find a lot of times when I'll begin describing the different ways that intuition arrives, people will go, oh, that's intuition? I experience that all the time. And they just don't know what they're looking at.
100%.
Like we'll talk about clairaudience as all of the gifts can start awakening on a 3D level and then move into more of a esoteric, ethereal level. But it can begin with something that you are physically experiencing, like every time you turn on the radio or open Spotify or walk into a store, you hear the same song. And then people are like, wait, that's a version of Clairaudience? And you're like, yeah, it does. It's not just you ask a question and you hear the voice of God in your ear, you know? And so if you slowly start awakening to that, I think for me, it'll be really intriguing to watch your children grow up, because I've always had this theory that perhaps accessibility to gifts is really tied to the environment in which you grow. And there's a lot of schools of thought that say that children come in so open to their intuition. And even just look at what children believe in. They believe in fairies and unicorns and mystical realms, and they have vivid dreams. And then they get to be a certain age, like, you know, anywhere above 7 to 10 years old. And then it starts being about achievement and where are you going in the world and what kind of grades are you making and what kind of friends do you have and what sports are you playing? And they start to get a little bit more wrapped in the 3D, which as a child, usually it's just state of play all the time. Yes. And I think that being in an environment and in a state of play is something that awakens gifts naturally. I grew up with parents and a grandmother and, a social environment that really conditioned and allowed for not just spirituality, but all of those intuitive gifts. And I'm an identical twin. And I've always wondered, even when I meet twins that seem to be a little bit more 3D dense, they all have psychic abilities with their twin. All of them do. And so I think for me, in addition to growing up with a mom that was extremely clairvoyant and so open and introduced us to so many things, my dad taught us to meditate from a really young age. And that was just so common to me, but also having that connection with another person, not only psychologically, but just this like spiritual tuning of like, we think the same way and we can sense each other. That makes it more real. And so I never entered a phase of my life where it was turned off. You know, I was just, the on switch was on from the get-go. And I think it'll be really cool to watch your kids grow up and see if they continue to lean into that, or if there's like,
Mom, you're so dumb. Shut up.
Yeah, my mom with her crystals.
You're embarrassing
and
me.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, something that I remember Don Javier saying very quickly to me when I first met him, and he says often, still to this day, is perception is everything.
Yeah.
And then there's that quote or that definition of manifestation that I really love, that a manifestation is a physical byproduct of a dominant vibration. And then you combine that with Nikola Tesla's infamous quote of like, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, you'll understand the secrets of the universe. And if one went away from this like only 3D getting into our fears and worries, and then just started kind of looking at your life through, I'm here to interpret energy, so much of what's happening tends to be like, the way I describe it is it's all metaphors for the energy, like things that happen, whether it's like stubbing your toe or like a chance encounter, or like why every time I'm trying to sign up for something, I can't, or whatever, that there might be some energy behind that. And that's just how it's being created in a physical form.
Yeah.
Right. And like our job becomes like, are you only looking at the byproduct? Or are you looking at the energy behind it? Are you perceiving the energy? And so then you go to the Kabbalion, and those are the 7 hermetic laws of the universe. And one of those is the law of cause and effect. And the whole concept and philosophy behind that is that everything has a cause. And so we can't help but then put that all together and say, is not everything we experience through the 5 senses, our eyes, our ears, what we touch, taste, and smell, is an effect of some cause, that like the cause is an energy, and then we see that byproduct. And I think if people just started seeing it that way, and that's conceptual, but you got to practice that, is conceptual. It's like, if someone had just told me that for the first time, I feel like it would take years to understand it. But then you start to see like what the energy is, or what the theme is, or like, where is this kind of feeling stuck, or what's the lesson here? What am I not feeling? And you start to perceive things, and you start to perceive it more clearly. And when you can perceive things more clearly, you're not dealing with the effects anymore. You're dealing with the cause. You're dealing with the energy. Yeah. And if you need to change the energy or do something different with your energy, you feel much more in the driver's seat to do so.
Yeah, I think that what you just said made me think that if you're operating from a context of everything around me is connected, I imagine it like a spider web. But for some reason, the strings are all red. It's like everything's connected by this invisible web. And as I move through the world, I'm impacting all of these other strings in other places. But if I'm responding to, there's all these other influences that are collaborating with me to show me my highest good. When I encounter something that feels like a red light or a barrier, then I, instead of being frustrated and, oh, why am I hitting up against this closed door? This is so annoying. I want to move through. I got to push through it. Then I start to go, that's interesting. Is there energy around that's trying to shepherd me from what is occurring right now? Or do I need to pay attention to that? And I think that people who feel like they're less tuned in to receiving guidance, it's more that they're less skilled in living in a context that everything is collaborating with them. And they're operating as I'm my own solo venture. And what I'm doing has nothing to do with everything else around me. Like, I think a lot of times when I experience disappointment, if I want something and I don't get it and someone else does, for example, like let's say you want to speak at an event and they choose Jill instead of me. But then if I sit with that, then I can go into the, like in yoga, they would call it mudita, like the ability to have empathetic joy for another person. Then I can be in the energy of Jill must be so joyful that she was the one chosen. And if I stay in that sense of not me, why not me? The closed door for me was an open door for someone else. And maybe that's Jill's time to walk through that door. And the closed door for me is pushing me towards an open door that's a better door for me. And so if you get stuck in this isolated worldview of only what's happening for you, you miss out on understanding the connectivity of all of us, that we're all connected to one another in a way.
I think when you talk about that too, I have to bring up a topic that Catherine and I talked about a little bit, which is kind of like the shadow aspect of this, where people kind of get blinded by this clarity a bit. We could maybe call it, even spiritual ego, where like we just kind of label everything as like, well, then it wasn't meant to be. Well, it wasn't meant to be. And, that was going to probably, and like, I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that, but I feel like sometimes people do that and they miss a lesson that was there for them. It's like, well, maybe you weren't ready yet and there was something you need to learn or prepare, but we just
there's a balance. Tweaked.
Like there's something that when you go down a path that it goes beyond just this like light and love combo, of just like, oh, it's just everything's good and light and love. But sometimes we have to tackle some dark aspects and really look at some things that are uncomfortable. And people go, well, that feels uncomfortable, so that's not light and love. So I want, you know what I mean? And that I turn away from that. I don't look at that. So I don't know if any of you wanted to speak to that.
I wonder if it reminds me of Catherine's decision not to continue pursuing medicine. So I wonder if there's something connected to, Jill and I were talking yesterday about how intention is really at the heart of all actions, and only you can know where your intent is. And two people can take the exact same action, but if they don't have the proper intent, it can have a different outcome, but can also have a different meaning. And in Buddhism, there's right view, right intention, right action. And you have to have the right viewpoint before you can have pure intent, before you can have the right action. So I think I'm trying to articulate this. If you're taking action in a direction and you keep experiencing a barrier, there's a moment of pause to go, what is my intention behind this action? And in Catherine's story, when she really paused at what's my intention behind all of this desire that I have to create this life for myself inside of, I'm getting chills. I'm getting be a doctor. I'm going into medicine. And she sat with that. What she found in her heart was that intention was not coming from, I'd like to please myself. Own desire. It was coming from, this is how I am a good daughter, or how I'm a good example for whoever else in her life. And once she got to the intent, she was able to change the direction. But if you're trying to do something, I listen to a lot of stories of people in film that because I just love movies. And there's so many stories of directors, filmmakers, actors where they're hitting up, it's a hard industry to break into. And they're hitting up against that closed door. And they have a moment where they pause and go, do I still want to do this? Because this is hard. And it's universally agreed that it's very hard to break into that industry. And most of the successful ones will go, I had this moment where I just realized this is what I love to do. And that's realizing that you're coming from pure intent, that you're coming from a pure heartedness of joy and dharma. And this is what I just feel like I need to do. And then past that moment, there's some sort of breakthrough. Yeah. But it's almost like the universe can test your intention, where if you aren't entering it from the purest place, you will hit barriers. And even if you are, you'll hit barriers so that that's the choice I want to make.
No, 100%.
That's what we just talked about yesterday. Yeah. In regards to like the universe is not testing you. It's reflecting you. So when it gives you that obstacle with that intent of, I want to create.
It's trying to show you.
It's checking in with you.
Yeah. Like, are you ready to go in? Is your heart in it?
I just want to validate what you were saying with medicine, because a big detail of this is I did get a degree, a bachelor's of science in molecular developmental and something biology.
Nerd alert.
I've never heard this. That's amazing.
Yes. I have a whole science degree, people. So anyway, what was interesting was that I very much convinced myself, because I was into manifestation at this time. There's like two sides of me. There was Catherine with her, and you open up my backpack and it's a biology textbook, organic chemistry, quantum physics, which I always ace those tests for whatever reason. I understood quantum physics, didn't understand regular physics. Shocking, right? All these signs. And then at the same time, I have Abraham Hicks. I have like all of these manifestation books, right? There's like these two sides of me. And so I created this very logical genius idea of, oh, I know why I got into manifestation. I don't want to take out $300,000 in loans for medical school. So I'm going to manifest the money and the ability and the good grades and everything I need to get into medical school. The thing is what you said, it was not a genuine desire. It's not my desire. So what ended up happening is, as I'm working so hard, and at this time I started my fitness business. So I got into the realm of online marketing. I was making some money through that. And I was like, oh my God, this is working. And at the same time, I'm like, all right, got to get the A's, got to get this GPA, got to start preparing for the med school applications, this and that, whatever. And the weirdest thing is just a series of weird events would start happening. It's like on test day, and only test day, the bus would break down, because I would take a bus from Tacoma to Seattle. For anyone who's familiar with that area, I would drive from Gig Harbor to Tacoma, get on a bus, get to the University of Washington. And it's like a 3-hour journey every day, 90 minutes there and back. So that was my time to listen to audiobooks and all this personal development stuff and build my business, like literally did it on the bus. And so the bus would break down. The bus wouldn't come. There would be an accident on the freeway. All these weird things where I would actually miss a full exam. And exams, in this level of education, like your entire grade is determined from 2 exams. You miss one, you fail the class. All of these weird things would happen. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, the universe kept pausing me.
Yes.
To give me all of these opportunities to be like, is this what you really want? Because in one facet, it's like, if it was what I really wanted, it's like, yes, I really want this.
Yes,
so
keep
it's
going.
like another opportunity for me to commit to the vision, commit to the intention, commit to the desire, and like go for it. Or if it wasn't a genuine desire, which it wasn't, and I didn't see it at that point, it's like, all right, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should continue with the online business, and maybe I should quit. Maybe I shouldn't waste my time. Do I even need the paper degree? Long story short is I ended up getting the degree. And then it was at this event where it just was like it's like I needed a whole soul intervention for me to all of a sudden see. And I'm sure it had to do with like things that Tony Robbins was talking about, and like making you reflect and doing the Dickens process and things like that, where I went, oh my God, this is not my dream. This isn't my dream. And no wonder it feels so heavy. And no wonder it feels so like dreadful. And no wonder there's so many unnecessary obstacles that keep showing up that I'm not listening to. So I just keep attracting more and more and more of them. And then after that, I'd like to say that the obstacles stopped, but they didn't, of course. I went through all these shamanic deaths with getting Manifestation Babe off the ground. The difference is that I went all in on those obstacles. I went all in on the commitment. I was like, nope, this is my dharma. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to help people. And through that, I learned the necessary lessons that I needed in order to get the success that I experienced today and help the amount of people that I've helped today.
See, but that's what I'm talking about is whether you noticed it at the time or in hindsight, because hindsight's 2020, right? You observed a pattern of bizarre things happening.
Yes.
And I think that's it. Like if anyone could start to cultivate and go, this is weird. And I would love for you guys, to, Jen and Jill, if you can come up with any examples. I have examples from both of you because you guys share them with me, but that you feel inspired to share because we all have them, where we go, this isn't a coincidence. This is telling me something. And you're just putting your perception on. You don't need to know in the moment. You don't need to go crazy thinking about what does this mean? What does this mean? But you're like, I'm gonna hang a hat on this. This is important.
Yeah.
And I need to come back to it. And then it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again.
That.
And I was telling you guys the story of the coyote and the roadrunner last night. And like today in my life, so many of, as there's that looks, I think, is that a condor? What kind of bird is just floating above us right now? As I'm literally saying, I get animal stuff like in the 3D the most. And what's so cool living out in the desert is a lot of people, I get animals too. I see a sticker or something on a book and I'm like, oh, I see the actual coyote.
A roadrunner came up to your window and just sat on the little perch outside your window.
During one of my calls, I'm on a coaching call, Zoom call with some of our clients. And I have never seen a roadrunner on this property, around this property since I've lived here. And it comes right up to the window and just looks right in, and I'm staring at it. Now, it was so funny and, a little sad for me because some people were like, haha, squirrel, James is distracted. Like they thought it was like an ADD brain going, what? And it was like, no. And I paused, like I was quiet on the call for like 5 minutes and I'm just connecting with it. And I've just trained myself. Well, I think we've all trained ourselves.
That's what I mean by that diffuse awareness of like, if some people go, oh, a roadrunner, I'm supposed to be focused over here. And it's like, but what if that's actually something tapping you on the shoulder?
And the best thing I do is when there is that, go, what was I just thinking? What was I just saying? What was I just doing?
Yeah.
And then we've had these experiences, even while we've been here, where like one of you guys will say something. And as you say it, out the window in the background, there's lightning over your head. Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay,
Truth.
so I've got to go off on this one.
Go.
So I thought my career was going to be in acting. So I moved my whole entire life, went to New York, and I'm studying at a school, and I get a job to working with a casting director.
Which, side note, by the way, you also worked with, or the same school was Tracy Goodwin.
Yes. She was the voice coach.
At that school.
It was the new school, right?
No, it was School of Film and TV, the New York Conservatory of Arts. Yeah. So all about patterns and recognizing it. But when you're in it, sometimes you don't recognize it.
Right.
I'd go to school. I was in it. I would leave. I'd end up at Barnes & Noble. Where did I end up? Not in the acting section, the spiritual section, which back in those days,
the self-help section.
The self-help.
The embarrassing, I hope no one
grab a book. Grab a book and then go into the teen vampire section. That's what I would do.
There I was reading all these books in the self-help, which is now called self-development, and the new age, which was only a shelf and a half.
Right.
And then I'd go back home to
and
my
this
apartment.
is like 10 plus years ago.
This is 2010.
Oh,
14 years ago.
And so there I was reading everything I can, and then would fly back to California to do Reiki training, get myself back to New York.
With Jen
and James.
Yeah.
Jen and James.
And then get back back in my acting class. However, then I decided I'm going to move back to California because I was really homesick. I get to California, move into my apartment, still doing my acting. I start having dreams of a humming. I would see crossroads, and on one side of the crossroad was a hummingbird's nest overflowing with eggs. Then another, it's a crosses off the
the fork in the road.
Fork in the road. Nothing on that side. Then I was like, oh, that was interesting. Write it down. Then I start seeing hummingbirds. Every time I would start reading the spiritual books, or would be doing that instead of working on my acting and memorizing lines. Then you, James, give me a book, the Abundance book.
Ralph Pierce.
And so that's like a 40-day meditation.
Really small book, yeah.
Really small. Day one of reading that book, I had a hummingbird start making a nest on my deck.
Mm-hmm. Outside your window, yeah.
Outside the window. And I was like, well, that's just wonderful. How peaceful. While I'm reading this abundance book, still like going, okay, I'm going to use this abundance book to manifest and create an audition that's going to be the breakthrough in LA. I'm going to get the role part, right? By day 40, the hummingbirds, I watched them fly off. And that night I had a dream. And the dream was I'm holding a bottle of wine that is ginormous. And I go to mom and I go, this bottle of wine represents my acting. One sip and I enjoy it. But the whole bottle, if I drink it, makes me really sick.
Wow.
I woke up and started to see the patterns of the hummingbird. Now, if you look at what a hummingbird represents, joy, drink the nectar of life. Oh, I have chills. When I was doing my acting, it wasn't lighting me up. Every time I had that spiritual book, learning about self-development, discovering more about myself, the hummingbird showed itself.
What was it about acting that got you into going to school for it? And
you want to know what it was?
Me.
It was you. No, it was me to prove.
Well,
No.
I was always making videos as a kid,
Yes,
and
yeah.
I needed an actress. So
I know, so I
mean,
held that
if
role.
I'm to blame,
You guys
I'm
haven't
sorry.
seen our homemade videos.
I took her away from her dharma by being a little actress.
No, you know what it was? I felt like you either go to college to be a doctor, lawyer, or something like that, and I refused. And I'm like, what's something that you can major in that is not sit at a desk? Acting.
Mm.
But
Wow, that
did
was
it
it, huh?
light me up? And I didn't know that until I was in it and saw the patterns of the hummingbird. And the hummingbird represents walk that path of heart. My heart was not in the
Wow.
acting. And that dream had to open and show it. So look at the patterns. See the animals that are coming up, the medicine they're bringing. It's everywhere. And Jen, what you talked about earlier, it meets you in the 3D because you're in the 3D.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it has to come through so that you see it. That was, I mean, Jill and I both have, we were so similar when we were younger. I mean, we're still very similar, but like, so I feel like I always felt like I was the bridge between you and James understanding one another because now you've come to the middle to where you guys are so much more similar than you were like in 2010. But in 2010, I think I was either still doing acting or I was leaving my acting career a little bit in the same way. And I was drawn to it because as a kid, storytelling, stories and movies and film and theater was always how I shifted my perspective of my own life. Like when my dad wanted to get through to me, we would go rent a movie and he'd be like, now watch the character in this movie. You know, like I remember when I was playing sports, I was always too short, too scrawny, no athletic ability. And my dad went and got the movie Rudy, and we would watch the movie Rudy. And anytime I got hung up about what I could or couldn't do about sports, he would be like, we need to watch Rudy. And we would all sit down and he'd go, you're the Rudy Rudiger of the team. And that fueled me to become a state championship athlete. So in my mind, it was like, storytelling is how you can help people reach their goals. And I got obsessed with that. How do you tell stories? How do you write stories? How do you going to film school and being an actor? And I remember one of my theater instructors said, I believe in theater to change lives. So I was so drawn to him as a director because I was like, yes, that's what we're doing. And then when I went to Tony Robbins, I saw him on stage interacting with people directly in their life. And then also he uses metaphor and story. And there were people that got it and people that didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I had this epiphany where I went, you don't have to tell a story to someone. You can talk to them directly about what is affecting them. And that was the moment where I looked at James and I was like, I want to do this. I want to help people realize what their path is, shift their lives, get out of their negative beliefs, or just create possibility. I've always felt like possibilities, both of our gifts, like we can just be in the realm of like what is possible.
Anything's possible,
And
yeah.
after seeing that, I went, I don't think I need to be a filmmaker. I think I want to be just invested in actually personal development for people, and discovering how to do that became like a little lifelong arc.
See, I didn't. And when we went to Tony Robbins together, it was all about business, and business was about making money. And it was more about making money by being left alone. That was my only desire to go onto the internet, was saying, wait, I could do this without having to interact with people. Yeah. And I was like,
so relate to this.
That sounds
without having to interact with people.
For me,
on the internet?
No. Interacting with people like so for me, why I started laughing is because I remember we had mock interviews in high school, and I was a very shy, introverted kid.
Was I. Yeah.
I hated like talking about myself and like this idea that I need to brag about myself and my skill sets to some person I've never met before for some job that I don't want.
Yes.
That's the story I created around it. And I remember going to this mock interview, and I think I was chosen last, and I like completely bombed it and just wasn't, it just felt like I was just being inauthentic for an hour. And I'm like, I don't ever want to do this ever. I never want to go through an interview process ever in my life to get some job that I don't want. And to this day, I've never done that. Like even the jobs that I've had, like when I did work at the movie theater in college, it was because my boyfriend was already working there. The boss already loved me because I would come in with him to come watch movies. And I already developed a friendship with her. And she's like, all right, let's just sign the paperwork. You're hired. Great. And then the other job that I had when I was transitioning between Beachbody and Manifestation Babe was working at my mom's best friend's office for a year as like the receptionist. I didn't have to interview for that. She was just like, yeah, Catherine, you're hired. Like she knows I'm smart and capable and I'm way like overqualified for the job, but she knew that I'm in here so I can build a business and just help her out for a year. And then other than that, I've only had my own business.
Yeah, very similar to me.
Yeah.
So I had none of that desire. And I remember when we were doing Reiki training and stuff, they would talk about like being a healer and healing people. I was like, what?
Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to see if this will make me more money.
Bill.
And will it heal my bank account? Because I'm in for that. And so my business started by actually trying to publish other people. And Jill and Jen saw a bit of that, is that I would go around trying to put other people on.
You tried to put me on the internet.
I tried to put you.
You told me to do a chocolate one. You said, Jill, I want to experiment.
Like you literally didn't want to be on the internet either.
Chocolate.
Yeah. So I was trying to get other people to be the face. I went through 7 different faces, 7 different people to try to publish them. That's why my company is called Level 5 Publishing.
Yeah.
Because
he was not going to be the front man.
Wait, say that one more time.
The reason my company is called, it's a great story.
Level 5 Publishing.
Level 5 Publishing was because I saw the opportunities. I could see it clear as day. And as I said, I need a persona, the brand. Hey, well, you go do it and I will do the marketing. I'll do the behind. I went through 7 people. They sucked. They were awful. Not you. We broke up. We broke up. That was what it was. So, but they were awful. They were just, it was pitiful. And I sit there and I literally had this thought saying, I guess I have to do it. Like if I can't get anyone else to do it, I reluctantly did it.
What does level 5 mean?
I'll tell you.
This is a great James Wedmore story.
I've always wondered when I get the PayPal notifications talking about Level 5 Publishing. I'm like, this is such a random universe.
This is how entrepreneurs should behave. No, seriously.
All hail James.
No. This story is the perfect example of how we should behave. I am at a marketing event in Anaheim, California, like 3 blocks away from Disneyland. And we're leaving the event and I'm with my business mentor at the time. And I wanted to be really coachable. And she looks at me, this is 2008, 2009. And she goes, James, do you have an LLC? And I go, no. She goes, you really need an LLC. Get an LLC as soon as you can. And she was saying this in the elevator. And when the elevator door opened, we were on the Level 5 parking lot. So I looked at the sign. I mean, I'll go to that place now and I'll take a picture of it. And it's probably still there. And it just said Level 5. And I wanted to be a publisher. So it was Level 5 Publishing. And so what I meant by like, that's how we should behave as entrepreneurs is like, there's this like, are you overthinking it?
Yes.
Are you in your head about it? I was like, just do it and go.
Just do it and go.
And that's it. That's how it was. So anyways, I want to continue with this because we are all sharing a story of like, we were not really in an alignment yet. And I firmly believe today, like the law of Dharma is that you will experience the most abundance, flow, all the beauty in life when you are locked in and clicked in with that alignment, with doing with what you're supposed to do, your purpose, your Dharma, call it whatever you want. So I knew I wanted to do business, but I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I didn't want to be the guy. I didn't want to be the face. Long story short, we launched Video Traffic Academy. I'm the YouTube guy, and it makes a ton of money, $400,000 in sales in 30 days. And so here's all the money. It's 5 years, and Jen was solid in my life. Like I worked so hard, so long, nothing, and boom.
Overnight.
And we had just broken up right before that happened. I fall into a deep, dark depression. Like I am miserable. I am unhappy. And then there's all the money in the bank account. And the only thing that got me out of that was two things. And then I'm going to go into another story with this. And it's a really cool one because it involves at least us three. But I've told Catherine before.
I'm the adopted family
so
member.
Yes,
for today, of course. So two things got me out of that. The first was Jen sent me some tapes about law of attraction that really started to teach me what I was missing. But the second thing was I got my first testimonial, first case study. Someone wrote feedback about how Video Traffic Academy helped him. I still remember who that person was, Jason Brown. And Jason Brown's a coach for us today.
Jason Brown was
the
your first testimonial?
Well, he was the first one I read. I mean, maybe another one coming. I hadn't seen
Jason Brown.
But I got it. It was in our Facebook group, and he goes, "Holy crap!" Something to this effect. Like I don't remember word for word, but I'll never forget the sentence. It was like, "Holy crap! This stuff actually works." I did exactly what James said, and I got this client. This is amazing. Thank you, James. And I got a little hit. It was like a little, whoa, what was that? And it just felt good. And then a week goes by, and there's another one, and another one, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I put all my importance on a business. I put all my importance on money. And I go, but the thing that feels good, the thing that doesn't make you feel depressed, the thing that doesn't feel empty is like that you made a difference for someone's life.
Yeah.
And that was December of 2011. Okay. I remember that time very clearly in my life. December of 2011. And from that day forward, that is what I chase and seek out every day. And it changes, it evolves, but there's something at that heart of that of like, oh, you're helping people, you're making a difference. And each of us can do that in our own way. So I just want to jump into a quick story real quick because we shared it earlier and I thought it was really cool to share. So it's January 2020. It's like right before the pandemic has happened, right before the whole world's about to turn. And I speak at an event. And then after I spoke at that event, I sit at a round table like this for dinner with the speakers. And one of the other speakers there was Kate Northrup. Now, I've known Kate. You guys all know Kate today.
Love Kate.
I've known Kate for a very long time. Like right as soon as I launched Video Traffic Academy. I met her in 2012. Right after that moment, actually, is when I met her. And she just looks at me and she gives me this look. She's like, because at the talk, it was a business conference. And I'm talking about some weird shit on there, like all that stuff people call woo-woo stuff. And she's like, where did you learn all this? Like, where did you learn it all? And we'd had about 2 or 3 glasses of wine at this time. So I start sharing the story and I'm just like a historian. I'm just going back and I'm detailing the facts. Well, at this time this happened, at this time, all of a sudden, I'm having this moment of like awareness that in the story, there's one common ingredient, there's one common variable, and it's Jen. Mm-hmm. That every point in my life for the past X amount of years, Jen came into my life, shared something with me, like those audios, or Tony Robbins, or an event that we went to, or a retreat, or a workshop, or Reiki, or this tool, or this healing modality. And all of a sudden I realized like where I was today at that point, this one person had been in my life all these different times. There's recognizing that pattern. And I just had that pattern recognition. And I'm like getting really emotional. Obviously I'm married at the time and I'm having this whole like shamanic death in that moment. Like I'm like, I need to excuse myself. The craziest thing is 2 weeks later, Jill calls me and says she had a dream. Do you want to share what that dream was?
Yeah. So I have this very powerful dream that I'm in like a classroom and our Don walks in and he tells me and shows me that he brought Jen into our life, into my life, to connect him to the dawn, but all the work as well with walking that spiritual path with Reiki and that whole journey. And I just get these chills in the dream and I wake up and it was this jolt of, holy cow, this was all planned. Jen is always, and by the way, for those listening, I hadn't had contact with Jen in years.
Same.
So it wasn't like, oh, I was just on a call. I was chatting with Jen yesterday.
Yeah.
It was like an old life when we had a relationship with her.
Years had passed. And I just get, oh my gosh, I have chills. It's so, and I just phoned James and like, it was the same thing. Like I was emotional of like, Jen was always meant to be in our life. And she brought us to she came into our life, brought us these tools to bring us to the dawn.
Yeah.
And then you start sharing with
because
me.
as I look, and it was like, you guys were always a little weird. And I was so, you guys, you and mom. And I was always like, the male pride ego would like push it away and just be like, all right, you weirdos, and like dad and I would go hang out and make fun of you guys. But Jen kind of became this bridge that could pull even my dad, because my dad loved Jen like so much back.
Loved you.
Like he was his happiest when Jen was around. He was always so happy.
He always loved that you hugged him and acknowledged him.
I love Bill.
Yeah.
Love you, Bill.
So that was amazing that I'm having this like 3D thing, and Jill's always gotten stuff in dreams. And then 2 weeks later, boom. And that's also about a month later is when the encounters with the Roadrunner and the Coyote started happening.
Oh, I didn't know
So I
that
come
on the
home from work one day and I do what I do every day. So how you get into routines in your life. You get home and like the first thing you want to do is go out on your beautiful deck. You got this amazing view. And I look down and there's a Roadrunner. Oh my God, I've never seen a Roadrunner before. Mm-hmm. And then the next day after work doing the same thing, I go down the jack and there's a coyote in the same spot where the Roadrunner was. And that set me on a whole path. And that whole year of 2020, which it was for a lot of people, and the next year or two people, was such a path of growth, transformation, and total paradigm shift in your life. And like the Roadrunner is like, follow the good like, come on, go this way, come this way.
Yeah.
And you're like following that. And there's so much about the coyote medicine of like, stop taking this or your life or you so seriously, and figure out the lessons here that you're supposed to learn from this, instead of doing what a lot of guys do, which is like compartmentalize. Like, no, just forget this area. And I was like, no. This is what you need to look at. This is where your next lesson is. So life for me changed drastically with everything that we're talking about, where it's like putting awareness and attention on these patterns, these signs, and they show up for everybody differently. And I think faith is a first piece with a definition or relationship with faith, is to remove the logic that we have around these patterns, because all of them, for anybody else, that if they just stumbled on something like this and they've never heard it before, it sounds like the most illogical thing. How does numbers on a clock mean anything? How does an animal that lives in nature, when you live in nature, have anything to do with anything?
Yeah.
Well, I always see it as like, with the logical mind, it wants to put things in a 3D box, but with the spirit realm, you cannot put it in a 3D box. So you have to let the logical side go.
And you don't get the whole puzzle. I think what I've noticed in supporting people awakening their gifts is sometimes they think that if you're going to become a master manifester or you're going to become extremely intuitive, that means that you're going to be able to see the entire year, 2 years, 5-year plan right in front of you. and then you'll know.
You get.
Yes, that's all you get is the very next step. And
all your faith into that one step.
And to bravely keep moving forward, knowing you only have that one step. James and I have, I bought us a replica of the artifact from the Indiana Jones movie of him taking the Holy Grail, of him taking the step out onto the ledge, and it looks like he's stepping out into nothing. Because I think that's the journey, is can you step out into nothing knowing that something's going to collaborate with you and catch you. And if you want to talk about like wild, crazy, the wackiest things that have ever happened in my life, it was 100% coming back into your life.
Yeah.
Because I remember you calling me and very politely, very respectfully communicating, for someone who was married at the time, communicating like, this is who you've been in my life, and I just want to say thank you. And I remember hanging up the phone and calling my mother and crying, and he married someone else. And it was like it was a beautiful share for you, but it was a heartbreaking moment for me, because I thought, oh, he's just realized this, and it's too late.
Yeah.
And then, 2 years later or a year later, I had been dreaming about red rocks. And at the time I was working for Lululemon. So as one on the management team at Lululemon, for vacation, you've got to put your vacation in. You plan it like way in advance, like sometimes a year in advance. You're coordinating with all the other managers. Yeah. And you're going, okay, when are you going to go on vacation? And when am I? And I had 2 or 3 weeks of vacation. I had scheduled it in. I didn't know where I was going, but I had booked it. And then I'm like, I keep dreaming about these red rocks. And Indy was a puppy at the time. So I thought, I think me and my puppy are going to go go wherever these red rocks are. It looks like the beginning of the Last Crusade of Indiana Jones. So I'm thinking, which is Moab, Utah. So I'm like, it looks like the beginning of Indiana Jones. I want to go camping there, I think. And then at the time I was really struggling with something very dark moving through in my life. And randomly I get this text message from James that I had been popping into his mind in meditation. He's like, it's happened 3 times. I'm just checking in. Are you okay? And for whatever reason, I chose to be vulnerable and say, actually, I'm really not feeling myself. I'm struggling with this. I've gone to Tony Robbins. I walked on fire. I'm doing my NLP and I just can't seem to move this. And he said, why don't you come out to Sedona? I have an Airbnb. You can just stay in the house. And I said, didn't Sedona have red rocks?
Oh my God.
And then I start Googling and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I've been seeing in my dream. So I said, can I come in 2 weeks when I have vacation planned? And then when I got here, more and more and more synchronicities started to happen. But I reflect on that and I think, like, if my 3D brain would have kicked in, I would have gone, no, it's not Sedona. I already decided it's Moab.
Right.
And no, I'm not going to go talk to my ex-boyfriend because he's checking on me. Like, it just would have been a no, and instead I just went, I don't know why, but that's a yes. And it's wild, I think, instances like that in your life where if you let your 3D brain override it, you'll miss the detour the universe is trying to take you on. And I think a lot of people do that because they're getting the sign, but it doesn't match up with what they've logically decided should be happening next in the sequence.
Yeah.
Because the universe is throwing in a non sequitur. And you're like, that's not what's supposed to happen. I'm on this path and I'm going this way. And then the universe has you zag. And if you don't go, I don't know why, but I'm going to step out into nothing and trust that, then you might miss a little adventure.
I feel go for it.
Well, which takes us back to how we started. Society did not set us up
Yeah.
to trust in it. I mean, you go to school and everything is all about, and if we see intuition as a muscle, well, let's make the logical mind the bigger muscle.
Right.
Yeah.
So you lean in on that one.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, is that everything we're saying wouldn't make logical sense to anybody if they're not already doing it.
I'd love to share a tool that really helped me. That was actually the thing that got me on this path, which is when I moved to Los Angeles, I was living on my grandma's couch and I'm like, what did I do? I just let go of this, certain very stable career path of medicine. I'm giving up one business and starting this like manifestation business. I let go of this really, like, what am I doing? And I can get so like esoteric and woo and spiritual. And a lot of people know me for that. But I also have a very strong analytical mind. Like I have a very strong logical analytical mind. And sometimes for me, it's like, I can easily get into overthinking and just using that, like just thinking and analyzing and analyzing and analyzing. And so for me, a lot of my journey and lessons even through now is just to like quiet the mind and be in your body and just receive.
Yes.
And so a tool that helped me that I love to offer my students is, a lot of people know me for this thing that I created essentially overnight called the 1 year experiment, where for just 1 year of my life, I just decided that I would set aside the logical brain. I would just set aside all the disbelief. I would just set aside temporarily this old life that I've been living up until now and just try something else.
I did this.
And created an experiment out of it. And of course, a year is a long commitment for people, especially because I think people have fear. They have so much fear, even about taking that next step is just so scary.
Yeah.
So I offer my students all the time just a 24-hour experiment. Just try it for 1 day or 7 days or a month, whatever you're comfortable with. And just for that 24-hour period, let's say, just like embody an alter ego, like create an alter ego, the version of you who has the faith, the version of you who does believe, the version of you who is already successful, just for 24 hours. And when the 24 hours is up, like you can just go back to the way things are. There's no like... nothing drastic or anything scary is going to happen in that 24-hour period. But what people often find out is that so many miracles can take place in that time period. Yeah. And what ends up happening is that 24-hour experiment turns into the 7-day experiment, which turns into the month-long, year-long, lifelong experiment.
This is blowing my mind because when I think about my life of like, when did I experience kind of a quantum shift in who I am, who am I being? I think about the year that I moved to Australia, because James and I ending our relationship when we were 27 was like a fissure in the universe for me. It was like a moment of, I don't know if I believe in love anymore. Who am I? What am I doing? And I shifted out of it by moving to another country. And when I moved to Australia, I remember having this moment on the train thinking I had a 1-year visa. And I had this moment thinking to myself, if I could just learn how to be completely present in every moment for this 1 year,
Yes.
I could expand the container of time for how long it feels like I'm in Australia. I just got chills. And I developed this mental experiment for myself. I knew somehow energetically that year was going to be one of the best years of my life. And it was so special because it stood out because I had never lived abroad in another country. And Australia was like my fantasy land. You know, it's just rainforest and beach and just amazing. And I would do this experiment where when I'd wake up in the morning, I would read the poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay, I think is the name of it. And I would imagine in my mind's eye that I was 80 years old and that I suddenly woke up in my body at 30 years old. And I had told myself when I went to sleep at 80, you're going to wake up in your body living the best day of your life, but when you wake up, you won't remember why it was the best day. So then I would create this, you know, I used to be an actor, so I like created this microcosm of like, I'm going to make this feel so real. And I would wake up and I'd be like, okay, I'm back in my body. This is the best day of my life. And the deal is I can't remember why. And then I would go throughout my day looking for these miracles. And the wildest things happened. Like one time it was a day where I was doing my experiment, and I'm not joking, my best friend from the United States, who did not tell me that she was flying to Australia, walked into Lululemon in the middle of the day. I think I tackled to the floor. I was so excited to see her. And I'm like, that's amazing that happened on this day that I'm doing the experiment. And then I started enrolling my friends in it, where I would get a group of people and we would all do it together. And we would just let the universe take us throughout the day. Like one time we ended up on a train and we went to another city and we went cliff jumping and we got ice cream. And then we would come together at the end of the day and like recapitulate, like what are all the tiny little openings for miracles where, you know, we're walking down the street and someone says, did you know there's a place to cliff jump in Currumbin? And we all look at each other and we're like, that's a sign. We have to go. And then we're free to do it. And so funny. One of my friends texted me like a week ago and was like, she's in Australia. I was thinking about you. I just remembered how you used to do those experiments and I'm going to do it with my kids. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so neat. But that became my 1 year of, can I live this entire year looking for
state of mind?
Yes. Looking for the magic. And I remember I found, you love Ron Dahl, right? The child author.
Yes.
I found a magnet with a quote of his on it that said, I might mess it up a little bit because I don't have it in front of me, but it's watch with glittering eyes all the world around you, because the magic exists in the most unlikely places.
That's literally how I walk through life.
Yeah. And those who don't believe in it will never find it.
This is literally why I say, and I know it sounds so Disney, but have a magical day, because there's magic in absolutely everything.
If you're looking.
For the magic with eyes through that.
And then it all comes down to choice.
Yes.
Which is how we started this episode.
Yes.
It's like choosing to receive.
Yeah. Oh, talk about chills.
And that concludes our episode. Did you guys want to share anything else before we wrap?
It was great.
I think it was great. I mean,
I cried.
We laughed, we cried.
The only thing I wanted to share when we were talking about children in the beginning and those first 7 years of how impactful they are with keeping that intuitive door open. And when you take yourself back to that time in your life, what is a tool? I'm going to ask you guys and see if you know. What is a tool that you have access to 24/7 as a child?
Imagination.
And our imagination is the bridge from our 3D body to the spirit realm.
I think that's why we doubt ourselves so much, right?
Yes. And we doubt it because it comes through the imagination. And then you go, oh,
I'm just imagining.
I'm just
So
making
fake.
this up. It's just in my head. And I have chills saying that. But with our children and even with yourself, can you stretch that imagination even more? Because it's the bridge. It's the cord. It's the it's the way the vessel comes in, the messages, and it enters through the imagination. And that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah. I love that.
Love it.
Cool.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Manifestation Babe podcast. If you loved what you heard today, it would mean the world to me if you took a moment to rate, review, and share this podcast with someone that you think would benefit too. Sharing the podcast is the best way to help it grow and create a powerful community to join you on your manifestation journey. In the meantime, come hang out with me on Instagram at my handle @manifestationbabe, or sign up for one of my next manifestation courses or offerings at manifestationbabe.com.